What is up, citizens of Gotham? My name is Grant Melwood, and you're watching the Ba-Boom Bitcoin Vigilante. Been traveling around, was at a cool conference 2 weeks ago, Bitcoin conference in Hong Kong, which was amazing. And then went to Bali for a Bitcoin conference there. I was sick, got a bad flu. So I couldn't go to the conference, but then I was in Bali for like 10 days, and I went to the following week was a Bitcoin meetup, and I met a bunch of really cool people there. That was awesome. And I've launched a new website, Bitcoin Hollywood. So bitcoin-hollywood.com. Check it out. It's pretty cool. Where do you buy Bitcoin at? Great question. So I would, it depends on where you live in the world. Certain exchanges, but the regulation in the United States is starting to open up Americans having access to other exchanges. I mean, for me, I use several different exchanges, and then I buy, and then I put it on. I put it in cold storage. That's the best way to go. So, I mean, Swan Bitcoin is a Bitcoin only exchange, and it has, if you buy $10 worth, or no, I'm sorry, you buy $100 worth using this affiliate code. There you go. swanbitcoin.com/Graham Elwood. If you buy $100 of Bitcoin, you get $10 in free Bitcoin, and I get $10. So you're supporting the show, and you're buying yourself financial freedom. This is not paid financial advice. I'm in the States. I buy it on Robinhood. I don't know if it's the right way to buy it. It really, to me, the key is to not keep it on exchanges, is to put it in cold storage. And you just have, put the bulk of it in cold storage. If you just have a little bit of money on an exchange or whatever, I guess that's fine. But I like Swan just because they're a Bitcoin only exchange. But there's other companies, it depends on what you want to do with it. If you're just going to buy and hold, then buy it on whatever exchange you feel comfortable with, and then move it to a cold wallet. I think that's the simplest solution. There's other, there's Coinbase.com, there's Crypto.com, there's all these other exchanges, and they sell all these other cryptocurrencies. And just when you go on those exchanges, just beware, they're always selling you some deal to buy this new coin. They're always trying to get you into some crazy altcoin. And I fell for that when I first got in, and you want to buy some coin for a nickel and watch it go to 1,000 a coin, and you're going to become a billionaire overnight. And that's just like crypto gambling, and it's not worth it for me. Just buy it and hold it. If you buy Bitcoin and hold it in the long run, you'll make money. Matt S. What? Graham, been a while. Curious your thoughts on Mondani, New York. Thanks, dude. Matt S. Dude, thank you so much for supporting the show, man. Shave your knuckles for justice. It's so great. I've been traveling and working on other projects, so I haven't been doing as many live streams, but now I'm set here for a while, and I'm going to go back to doing 3 live streams a week. That's my commitment. Definitely Bitcoin focused, but still going to talk politics. And Matt wants to ask a great question here about Mondani. I'm happy to answer it because the channel was the political vigilante for years, and now we're changing it to the Bitcoin vigilante. But I still want to talk politics because Bitcoin is a political act. But Bitcoin, I have a book coming out soon called Bitcoin for Activists. So we're going to be discussing that when that comes out. Holly Horn is our moderator. So what do I think of Mondani? Well, first of all, he's been attacked by the Republicans and the Democrats. So Trump, called him a terrorist. Kristen Gillibrand, a Democratic congresswoman, a Democratic senator from New York, said he was a jihadist on a radio show a couple of days after he won. So if you're being attacked by both parties, you're good in my book. You must be doing something right. If both parties hate you, and the fact that he said in the Democratic mayoral primary on TV in New York City that all of the candidates said the first thing you're going to do is go to Israel. And he said, well, I'm going to be the mayor of New York. And because he's a Muslim American, he's all this racism is thrown at him. It's insane. It's insane to me. And, they're like saying he was happy about 9/11. And he said in an interview, he goes, I was 6 years old. It was scared. I was scared when that happened. And he said his allegiance be to the citizens of New York. And that's what any mayor should be doing. They shouldn't go to another country. I mean, if the mayor of Chicago, where I'm from, said my first day as mayor, I'm flying to Dublin because I'm an Irish Catholic, I would be like, why? I'm an American of Irish descent. My grandfather on my mom's side was 100% Irish. I got Irish on both sides of my family. Why? I would be like, why are you going to another country? Why are you going to Dublin? What does Dublin have to do with the city of Chicago? I mean, why are we giving allegiance to any foreign country? Imagine if Mamdani would have said, my first day as mayor of New York, I'm going to Mecca and pledge my allegiance to Islam. People would go bananas. Oh my God, he's a terrorist. He hates the New Yorkers. He hates America. So why is he, and listen to his issues. His issues are renters' rights, workers' rights. Well, the corporate Democrats, no way, they go after him. Even CNN, what's her name, Erin, that when she has a show, and they showed a clip, and she's just like, is Mamdani, it's all, he's a threat to the corporate Democrats, which control New York City. And so I think he's shaking things up, but I just want to give you some perspective here. So that organization that I've worked for, Open Primaries, they're a nonprofit, nonpartisan, and all they do is advocate to get independent voters more ballot access. Many of you are aware of this, some of you might not be, is in a lot of states, New York being one of them, you have to pick a party to vote in the primaries. And a lot of people I'm an independent. I don't want to sign up for a party. And so they're locked out of the political process. And I've worked for this organization for over 10 years, and I've shot videos for them. I was shooting stuff in New York City in May this year before the mayoral primary, which again, in a blue city, like the Democratic primary is basically determines, that's why voting in primaries is so critical. And we are interviewing New Yorkers. And if you go to follow at Open Primaries USA, I think, is their social media handles. Anyway, look them up. You can see some of the interviews I did over the summer that I directed. And they had these, a woman in her 20s and a guy in his 30s, a Gen Z and a millennial, just out in the streets. I'm a lifelong New Yorker. What do you think about this? And all these New Yorkers are like, wow, I didn't realize that independents can't vote, or they already were aware of it. So this was potentially going to be put on the November ballot. So just to clarify what's happening, Mamdani won the Democratic primary. And so he's going to run against the mayor, who's a Republican, the current mayor, Eric Adams, I believe. So the city of New York, which you can't be an independent and be a poll worker. You have to pick a party to work in the polls in New York City, just to show you how entrenched in the two-party system it is. And again, Mamdani is like giving people New York, it's impossible to live there. It's too expensive. And New York City years ago used to have affordable apartments. That was New York. It was small, but you could have your own apartment. Nothing's affordable there anymore. Same thing in LA, same thing all over America. Nothing's affordable Um, Adams dropped out to allow Cuomo to win. See, when both parties are working, if that's true, I'm not following this as closely, but I'm following the reaction of Mamdani. If that's true, Matt, then you see, you see the two parties will join forces to crush someone that is that look how popular he is. He won with 80% of the vote. And they're trying to paint him as a terrorist. They're trying to paint him as a communist. They're trying to paint him, oh, he's the word. This is what happens when you have out of control capitalism. When only a handful of rich people control everything and working class people in all over the country can't afford anything, then you get populism. And right-wing populism is just a fancy way of saying fascism. And left-wing populism is like workers' rights and renters' rights. And so anyway, they were going to put this, they were petitioning, and there's this charter review board. The whole month, there's like a whole month or two of basically town hall meetings and people petitioning, saying, we want to put open primaries, just to put it on the ballot for November, to give New Yorkers the opportunity to decide if they want to let independents vote in their primaries. And after Mamdani won, I was told that all of these like powerful liberals came in and said, no. If we let independents vote, then Mamdani's going to take over our city. So this is the farce of the Democratic Party. The Republican Party, we know, is pretty anti-Muslim. They've been that way for a while. The Democratic Party claims to be the party of diversity, and push comes to shove, rich liberals will defend the corporate oligarchs and the kleptocrats. They'll defend them rather than let working class people. The Democratic Party likes to run on these culture issues. We protect trans rights and gay rights, and we protect minorities and immigrants and all this stuff, but it's all show. So the liberals basically killed it, and that the decision was made right before July 21st that they killed it. The liberals petitioned to block just a chance for independents to be able to vote in the primary. This is how entrenched New York City is. It's corrupt. They use old machines, and when push comes to shove, the two parties will protect themselves rather than let voters vote. And this is the Democratic Party that claims to be protecting democracy. Look, Trump is just abandoning the Constitution, and he's doing all this stuff, and the Democrats go along with it. And so I think Mamdani is actually good for New York City. I think it's good for American politics. I remember a year ago, I interviewed somebody in Sacramento who was Arnold Schwarzenegger's chief of staff when Arnold was the governor of California. And this guy, lifelong Republican, said this country desperately needs a third party. So they're going to try to they're going to do everything they can to try to beat Mamdani. They're going to do everything they can to try to beat him. And if he does win, awesome. But if he doesn't, I think if he doesn't win, if they truly crush, then Mamdani needs to start a third party. He needs to really start a third party. That needs to happen in this country. And it needs to come from the working. It needs to come from labor. Labor is the thing that unifies everybody. America is being pushed into civil war. We're being told we're in a culture war. That's part of what the Charlie Kirk thing was, I believe. Not that he's some hero. He said a lot of racist things. There's all these videos of everything he said. No one can dispute what he said, but he should not have been gunned down. And who is the gunman? Looks like it could be a right winger. Looks like there's a conspiracy. Who knows who did it? Somebody was saying Mossad. I don't know. But we need a third party, and we're in class warfare. Americans don't realize it. They're in class warfare. We're in class warfare. But we're told we're in a culture war. That's why Charlie Kirk was a useful guy. He helped push the culture war stuff. That's why he got elevated so quickly. Anybody that pushes culture war and is controversial, they always get elevated. They never get, they might get some censorship, but man, they get huge followings, and that gets pushed really quickly, because anything that keeps Americans divided, anything that keeps us divided is good for the ruling elites. And the Charlie Kirk assassination, the assassination attempt against Trump last summer, I think these are coordinated attempts to try to push us into a civil war. But you also can't rule out a crazy guy with a gun in America. That's also a very realistic thing. Here's the latest polls according to Holly Horn. Latest: Mamdani 43%, Cuomo 27%, Adams 12%, Silva 12%. Adams is still in. Okay. Yeah. So, great question, and thanks for supporting our show, guys. You can do what Matt S. did and just do a super chat. That's a great way to support our show. Also, go over to my Bitcoin Hollywood page and subscribe. We don't have a lot of subscribers. We're trying to get that number up. So if everybody went over there, that'd be great. So I just wanted to let me get our next segment. But great question, Matt. A really, really great conversation. I like that. Hold on. Let me get this next segment queued up. Where was it? I just wanted, there was a speech that was given at the Emmys a couple of nights ago. All right, I'm getting this segment queued up. Thanks, Graham. You always bring insight, even if I disagree. Right on, Matt. Well, like I always said, Matt, it's good to see you in the chat. I haven't seen you in a while, and you always come on. And this is what it should be. You come on wanting to hear a different point of view, and maybe it's one you don't necessarily agree with. But instead of, you've never like argued and Graham in the chat, you just like, let me hear your perspective. And I encourage that behavior, and I wish, like, share that with your friends. Like that if you come here and just ask questions, you're in a safe space. You can come here and just fucking say shithead things in the chat, then that gets annoying, and I eventually got to block you because it just gets annoying. So I appreciate you just willing to hear a different point of view, and I think we should all be willing to hear different points of view. One thing Bill Maher said about Charlie Kirk is he said, he came on, he goes, the thing about conservatives, they're willing to talk. They'll talk to you. And liberals will just go, no, I'm done with you. You're a racist. I'm out of here. And there's a lot of truth to that. Liberals will just go, nope, we're completely open-minded, only with people we agree with. And I have a lot of conservative friends, and we don't agree on a lot of stuff, but they're totally like willing to talk to me, willing to be my friend, willing to go out and have lunch. And I respect that. And I used to kind of be that, I did that with some folks, and if someone's being insulting in their debate, then no, fuck you. I don't care what we're talking about. I don't care if we're talking about sports. If you're going to be insulting, then we're done. But if Americans need to just get comfortable with this statement. I agree to disagree on that one. Yeah, I don't agree with you on that. But anyway, like, move on. I'm not trying to change your mind. I'll give you a perspective. And if my perspective changes your mind, if you hear some facts and information that you weren't aware of, that you change your mind as a result, great. All right, let's get this queued up. Here we go. All right, I'll be back with our next hot, fresh segment. Yeah, everybody, go over to Bitcoin Hollywood and hit the subscribe button. I'll be right back. Hello, citizens of God. My name is Graham Elwood, and you are watching the Boom Bitcoin Vigilante. That's a way to support our show with Bitcoin on chain. There's other ways to support it below. So I've been in the entertainment industry for a long time, and you know, celebrities talking about causes at award shows. You know, I've seen some people say some interesting stuff there, and I think if you're an actor and you know have a cause, you should talk about it a little bit. There's also some hypocrisy at the award shows. You know, there's people wearing, especially the women, are wearing $200,000-$300,000 in dresses and jewelry, and when they're complaining about some injustice, it's like, really? But what I did not ever see, I mean, Vanessa Redgrave called out the abuses of Palestine in the 70s, and she was banned from Hollywood. Banned. And now there's been a list of, I don't even know what the number is, several hundred, it might even be over 1,000 of actors who have signed saying, we don't want to work with any big companies that are supporting the genocide. And a lot of Jewish people are speaking out about what Israel is doing, and they're making the distinction. So one of the women that won her first ever Emmy, in her speech, she said, "Go Birds." I think she was supporting some team, and then she was like, something like F ICE and Free Palestine. And then after the Emmys, she was asked to clarify, and this is what she said. And her name is Hannah Einbender, sorry. So you give the big speech in front of everybody, and then after you get your award, you go backstage and then usually answer questions from the press right after that.
When you were up on stage, you talked about Palestine, and I know you signed a pledge too. Can you talk about that, please?
Yeah. So, well, I thought it was important to talk about Palestine because it's an issue that's very dear to my heart. I have friends in Gaza who are working as frontline workers, as doctors right now in the north of Gaza to provide care for pregnant women and for school children to create schools in the refugee camps. And it's an issue that's really close to my heart. For many reasons, I feel like it is my obligation as a Jewish person to distinguish Jews from the state of Israel because our religion and our culture is such an important and long-standing, basically like institution that is really separate to this sort of ethno-nationalist state. And in terms of the pledge, it's like.
So real quick, she just called Israel an ethno-nationalist state. She says as a Jewish person, being Jewish is very different than this Israel an ethno-nationalist state. That's what she just said.
Many movements, boycotting is an effective tool to create pressure on the powers that be to meet the moment, you know. So the Film Workers for Palestine boycott does not boycott individuals. It only boycotts institutions that are directly complicit in the genocide. So yeah, it's important to me, and I think it's an important measure, and so I was happy to be a part of it.
Wow. That's
Hannah, I wanted to ask you, when you were up on stage, you talked about
that's significant. So Film Workers for Palestine. I mean, I I often get frustrated with the entertainment industry, but there's times when I'm like proud to be a part of it, when like people are speaking out in that way, and that all of these people sign this pledge, and these are big name celebrities. I mean, these are Javier Bardem, who's he showed up in a keffiyeh. I mean, it's like people were wearing and the it's like ceasefire now pins or whatever. There's people protesting. There's Israelis protesting in Tel Aviv against this. I see these on social media all the time, and I don't see these on the corporate media. So I don't, it's frustrating when you think about like what's happening, and all of these kids are dying, but there's people speaking out. So I've been hugely censored, man, hugely censored. But I know that the tide will turn and that the truth will come out. And, people like Lee Camp is talking about it, and Katie Halper is talking about it, and they were raised Jewish, and it's near and dear to my heart because I was raised Catholic. I'm no longer practicing Catholic. I'm a Buddhist. But one of the things that allowed the pedophile priest thing to keep going on was Catholics, Irish Catholics, turning a blind eye to it. I know somebody that grew up in Chicago, and they went to Catholic school, and everyone just said, "Oh, that's Father Hallahan," or something like Happy Hands Hanahan or whatever. Everybody knew that this don't get too close to that preacher. He'll put his hands on, everybody just allowed it to happen. Watch the movie Spotlight. The city of Boston, these Irish Catholic who run the whole city, just kept turning a blind eye to it. And finally, Irish Catholics had to speak out. Irish Catholics had to call out the church. It needed outsiders to say what this ain't right, to speak up. There's a quote from Stanley Tucci's character, who was playing the actual Armenian attorney Garibaldian, who said, "These people," talking about the Irish Catholics in Boston, who think they're better than everybody else. Look at the way they treat their children. It takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to abuse one. It's a quote from the movie. And it's true. Irish Catholics really think they're better than everybody. I've been around that. Oh, we're better. And that creates an environment where abuses can happen and people turn a blind eye. So I applaud this woman for speaking out. I applaud anybody that's speaking out for this, especially if you have a big platform like that. That's a big thing to do in Hollywood, and she's Jewish, and I don't know if there's been fallout or repercussions, or they're going to, try to take work away from her, but that's the thing. There's a movement. Vanessa Redgrave was all alone in the 70s, all alone. And here we are 5 decades later, and there's a list of hundreds of very wealthy, powerful, famous people who are speaking out. And that's what it's going to take, because this is wrong. It's just wrong. What about Hamas? Well, yeah, why are you bombing hospitals? The Hamas, this is a one-sided thing. Holocaust survivors are talking about it. Gabor Mate, breaking the silence, which is ex-Israeli soldiers. There's all these Jewish and Israeli people and organizations that are speaking out about this. So I applaud that they did this, and it's the right thing. And changing your view, you were raised a certain way, doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't mean you're abandoning your family or whatever. It means you're like, wow, I was only given this much information. That's the key. Are you willing to hear other points of view? I'm only going to listen to this news. I'm only going to listen to media that reflects what I think. You're not a free-thinking person. I hate to break it to you. You have to hang out with other people. And I used to be that way. I got to look back and be honest with myself. I was a closed-minded liberal. I thought I was open. I was closed-minded liberal. I have to own that. And now I'm an anti-war, pro-labor, democratic socialist, which means I'm willing to hear other points of view. I don't have to agree with all of them. And I love being in the Bitcoin space because there's a lot of center-right people in the Bitcoin space, libertarians, and there's some lefties. But the thing that we all agree in the Bitcoin space is that Bitcoin can fix all of these problems. Bitcoin takes money away from the central banks that fund the wars. There's only ever going to be 21 million Bitcoin ever made. So that's why I always say, if you as a regular person buy, and this is not financial advice, I'm not a financial advisor, but if you buy every little piece of Bitcoin you buy, it's a little piece of Bitcoin a billionaire cannot own. Yes, I tied this to Bitcoin. Bitcoin ends war. I'm a firm believer in it. Thank you for supporting our guys. Support us with a Bitcoin donation. Support us with some fiat donations down here. There's a lot of great ways you can support what we're doing. We just want to speak the truth and bring out stories that maybe in a perspective that other people, that's different. So I've seen war up close as a civilian, and I'm against war. I'm just against it. Anyone that's doing it, funding it, supporting it, I'm against it. You know, so yeah. Like, share, subscribe, and shave your knuckles for justice. Boom. Thanks, everybody. Let's get our next story queued up. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. Yeah, there's a really cool interview Natalie Brunell just did on Fox. That's pretty awesome. Where is it like that? So, you know, guys, the super chats are another great way to support the show. Matt asked them one. If you do a super chat, I'll absolutely answer your question. And it is a great way to support what we're doing. If we want to unload some fiat, unload your fiat. Come on. I know I saw it. I put it in the Well, it's good. MintPress has raised $30,000 in 5 days. That's cool. They're trying to shut down MintPress. I'm glad that that's staying alive. Hold on. I know I saved this. Hold on. Here we go. Queuing up the next thing. Abby Martin has been on the ground in Gaza and speaking out for at least a decade. She was going to speak in Georgia, USA, and the authorities demanded that she sign an agreement not to ride. Yeah, I know. I saw that. Yeah, she did Gaza Fights for Freedom. I was going to say that Hannah's correct, and then I realized how minimally I've been educated in this country, even though I would generally. Well, yeah, that's the thing. What do they deliberately not teach us? Hey, Graham, did you hear about the all-female bar that had to close after their opening night? No one bought a single bottle or something. All right, let's do our next segment, everybody. Hello, citizens of Gotham. My name is Graham Elwood, the Bitcoin Vigilante. How are you, folks? Like, share, and subscribe to what we're doing. I want to talk about the Bitcoin is bad for the environment. We keep hearing that, but there's all this evidence to show that Bitcoin mining is actually, there's a lot of clean energy, renewable energy Bitcoin mining projects. And we're going to get into that in a sec. Natalie Brunell was just on Fox Business and talked about this. So, and you can support what we're doing down there. And also I have a new YouTube channel, Bitcoin Hollywood. So go over there, subscribe. There's interviews and cool stuff that we just did at the Bitcoin Asia conference in Hong Kong. But I want to talk about Natalie Brunell, who's very big in the Bitcoin space. And I don't want to sweep under the rug the amount of energy that Bitcoin mining uses. A lot of energy. There's no two ways about it. That's absolutely true. But some people just say, oh, it's bad for the environment, so I'm against Bitcoin. Well, several things. First and foremost, look at the central banks. How much energy is used just to light up all of the ATMs around the world and just walk into a bank? How much energy is used, not to mention all of their servers and all that other stuff. So there's that. But more importantly, and the central banks fund the war machine, and the biggest polluter on planet Earth is the United States military. So Bitcoin mining is having basically a hard drive or a bunch of hard drives that do all of the mathematical equations that can mine, that can basically win Bitcoin. And I'm very much simplifying this. And the number one cost, if you're a Bitcoin miner, is energy consumption. So Bitcoin miners are looking for clean energy. They're looking for the cleanest, cheapest energy to do it, to run a Bitcoin mine. So there's a lot of solutions out there. To say that Bitcoin uses a lot of energy is absolutely true. And to ask, hey, Bitcoin should be doing more clean energy, I'm all for it. I'm an environmentalist. But I've had some people, fans of mine, like, Graham's abandoning his environmental stance for Bitcoin. No, you haven't researched enough about Bitcoin. And I've met people at Bitcoin conferences that are doing all this clean energy. One of the main things they're doing is they're also capturing wasted energy and putting basically a Bitcoin mining rig on top of it. And here's Natalie Brunell talking about this on Fox.
Author of the upcoming book, Bitcoin is for Everyone, joins us to break this down this morning. Natalie, great to speak with you. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. I'm going to jump right in. Natalie, just for folks that aren't as familiar, just tell me how Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining, how does that consume energy, number one?
Well, Bitcoin mining consumes energy in order to secure the network. So it's the one thing that you can't print, right? And so you have to expend the resources in order to pay for that energy, or you have to buy the Bitcoin itself. So it really secures the network in a way that is ethical, because no one is in control, no one is in power that can manipulate it or print more Bitcoin. And so I want to touch on your points about renewable energy, because really more and more Bitcoin mining operations, they are plugging into renewable sources like wind, solar, hydropower. And what makes Bitcoin mining so unique is its flexibility, because miners can locate anywhere that energy is stranded, energy that is wasted, and where renewable energy is maybe abundant, but really underutilized, like in East Texas. And Bitcoin miners can shut down in seconds when the demand spikes. So instead of straining the grid, they actually help stabilize it by soaking up excess energy when the supply is really high, and then giving it back when homes and businesses need it the most.
Yeah, I mean, that's just...
So let's I just want to address that right there. That's the thing the miners can do. They can shut their things down. Like when there's a high demand, oh, it's 110 degrees and the grid is getting demand. Well, miners can just shut down. And that has happened, and miners do that. Because they also, again, some of it's just profit motive, let's be clear. When there's high demand, energy costs more. So the miners are like, well, let's shut down when the demand drops, like at night or whatever. But that is also helping out the grid and helping out the system. So that's an important point that she just brought up.
Fascinating to hear. Obviously, when it comes to Bitcoin mining and just the generation and technology, it is a really fascinating field to do a deep dive in. So how does Bitcoin mining curb that demand on the grid, as you mentioned, when the use is really high. I think about Texas and some of the problems they've had on their grid in the most recent. But again, this actually helps that cause.
Exactly. So unlike most industries, Bitcoin mining can pause instantly. It's like shutting off a light switch. So if the grid is under a lot of stress, say in the middle of a heat wave or an extreme weather event, miners can actually power down and then redirect that electricity back to the community. So in Texas, like you mentioned, we've already seen miners shut off during peak demand, and they help keep the lights on and prevent blackouts. They act like essentially like a pressure valve for the grid, which makes the entire energy system more resilient. So when you think of extreme weather, storms, freezes, heat waves, energy demand can really swing very wildly, right? And most businesses, they can't just stop operations without huge losses, but Bitcoin miners can. They really allow grid operators to suddenly have this flexible load that they can call on in the case of emergencies. So it's almost like a new kind of resilience tool, and it helps prevent, again, blackouts, and it makes these renewable energy projects more financially viable and incentivizes us to build more of them out.
Absolutely. Natalie, all right, I want to at least bring up the fact that some critics do say that Bitcoin is actually bad and detrimental to the environment. How do you respond to something like that?
Well, it's one of the biggest misconceptions. I actually dedicate a whole chapter in my upcoming book to Bitcoin and energy use. Bitcoin mining is actually really pushing the energy sector toward renewables faster than pretty much any other industry, because Bitcoin miners, again, they know where energy is cheapest.
So I just want to reiterate that the Bitcoin mining industry is pushing for more renewable. What other industry is pushing for renewables? Again, this is why I got into it. This is why I'm like this Bitcoin lefty and people think I'm nuts. They're going to help because there's a lot of money in Bitcoin. Look, money moves the needle. This is why I advocate for lefty activists to buy Bitcoin, because it empowers you financially. You're not beholden to the banks. And the Bitcoin mining industry, and it's a big industry, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, $2.4 trillion in market cap in Bitcoin. They're pushing for more renewable energy. That will make renewable energy happen. When the energy demands, and AI has a huge drain in the last 2 years of AI. Oh my God, the servers for AI, they're huge drains of energy. So these Bitcoin mining and AI might actually be the two catalysts that force the world to get off of fossil fuels, and we have to go to sustainable energy for profit. That's the reality. But for me, whatever gets us to green energy, I don't care how we get there. We gotta be on green energy. We have to get off of fossil fuels. It's imperative. So again, she's talking about the misconceptions of Bitcoin. And she's disproving. She has her own book coming out.
And they often tap into these stranded or wasted power sources that can't easily be transported to cities. And so instead of competing with households and communities for power, they're actually monetizing surplus green energy and proving that these renewable projects can be profitable and financially incentivize them to build out more of them. I actually was able to do a mini documentary about Bitdeer's operations around the globe in places like Norway and across the US, where they're using all these renewable energy sources. And so it's really amazing and incredible. And I wish people would look into it more, because Bitcoin has grown to be a top 10 asset in terms of market cap, but it uses less than 1/10 of 1% of global energy.
Less than 1/10 of 1% of global energy. I want to distill what you just said into just a phrase and basically ask you a question. So do you think that Bitcoin mining will actually continue to grow the energy system in the US and around the world, is what you're saying?
I do, and that's actually a top priority for this administration, right? Energy independence. And utilities are really already partnering with Bitcoin miners because they do see such...
All right, here's a little pushback. Let's be real clear here. The Trump administration talks about energy independence, but when the Trump administration talks about energy independence, they're talking about fossil fuel, because that funds, they give a lot of money. They give a lot of money to Trump and the Republicans, and they give some money to the Democrats as well. So this is where I just disagree with Natalie on this one. The Bitcoin strategic reserve bill that Trump passed, that has been good for the price of Bitcoin. But Trump also has a meme coin. He has those scam coins, which I do not support. I'm a Bitcoin only person. And the strategic reserve bill was drafted by Cynthia Lummis. She should be given credit for it. So this is where I don't agree, because Trump's energy independence is funded by the fossil fuel industry. Again, follow the money, connect the dots, get the truth. Or as we say in the Bitcoin world, don't trust, verify. Go to opensecrets.org and see how much money of fossil fuels was donated to the Trump campaign and the Harris campaign. They give to both, but they give a lot to the Republican Party because they want to keep us on this dirty energy. So her allegiance to Trump is what I think trips her up. Or at least what I don't agree with.
Value in a very flexible customer that can turn off in seconds. And as we add more wind and more solar to the grid, which I think we will, that flexibility is really critical. So Bitcoin mining, I think, is going to help build out the next generation of resilient, renewable energy infrastructure. And at the same time, it secures the Bitcoin network, like we talked about at the start of this. It's a technology that I think is going to strengthen both our financial and our energy systems. And it empowers, no pun intended, a lot of people economically.
Fascinating stuff here. And, I think the Bitcoin industry and just it's so fascinating to me in general. Real quick, where can I get my hands on your book at?
The book is coming out November 18th. You can get it anywhere that books are sold right now. You can pre-order it, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. I try to create the most approachable introduction to Bitcoin that I could. And again, there's a chapter dedicated specifically to energy use, all of that.
Well, that's all I need to hear. That's totally in my field and in my repertoire. Natalie Brunell, thank you so much for your time and really for your insight. That was a really interesting conversation. I could go on with you.
Well, that's cool. I applaud her for saying those things, and I look forward to reading her book. So, like I said, I continue to talk about the environment. I'm talking about how Bitcoin mining will actually fund and fuel, no pun intended, as she said, more green energy. Bitcoin saving the world, kids. Follow the money, connect to that, get the truth, and shape your knuckles for justice. Boom. What's up? Even in a bearish Bitcoin market, low estimate of 45 trillion watts per year, that would be equivalent of powering 10.8 million homes, which is enough energy to end homelessness 18 times over. Data centers get privilege pricing of 2 cents while run peak by 7 cents. Oh, wow. Good information. Thank you. Thank you, Holly Horn. Confucius say, man who Bitcoin get big tooth. Palm strike enthusiast. Thank you. And we'll end the show real quick on just a Michael Saylor. Support the show any way you can, guys. All right. I'll be back in less than 10 seconds with our last hot fresh segment. What's up, everybody? My name is Graham Elwood, and we are watching the... I'm doing that one over. That one sucked. Hello! Did Michael Saylor just say Bitcoin's going to be at $13 million by the year in the 2040s? Boom. We're going to talk about his recent interview with Natalie Brunell and his bold prediction. You were watching the Bitcoin Vigilante. My name is Graham Elwood. That's a way to support our show right there. There's also scrolling ways to support our show. We have Patreon. There's bonus content. All different ways to support our show. Michael Saylor is the creator of MicroStrategies. He was a software developer. He, very smart guy. And he figured out Bitcoin about 5 years ago. It was right during the pandemic when he went, oh man, I got to get all in on this. And he started really paying attention to it. And now MicroStrategies just keeps buying more Bitcoin. Their stock keeps going up. When the asset increases, they take a loan against their asset and buy more Bitcoin. So he's all in, and he's a highly intelligent dude. And he's like, this is when I started hearing him 5 years ago talk about this. I was like, wait a minute. I started to pay more attention. And again, I'm a comedian, filmmaker, surfer, vegan. I don't understand. Tech and finance is not my strength. So I started paying a close attention to him. So he is very much understands it. So listen to what he had to say with Natalie Brunell.
I think the best way to get superior returns, 100x type returns, if you're an individual, would be you keep your day job, and so you maximize the cash flow you generate via whatever your profession is. You're responsible on your expenditures. You have to think in the year 2045, I think a Bitcoin's worth $13 million. So every Bitcoin that you don't buy is a $13 million cost. That Ferrari that you're going to buy is going to cost you like 6 Bitcoin. And so it's going to be a $100 million Ferrari, right? If you look out 20 years. So you have to keep your job. Unless you're insanely rich, don't splurge on the Ferrari. Buy the 6 Bitcoin instead. And with regard to leverage, the intelligent leverage for the individual is generally long-dated, mid-dated mortgage debt. So if I have any kind of property, if I have a house, I would put a long mortgage on it, a 10-year mortgage, a 15 to 20-year mortgage on it, especially a conforming loan. And then I would roll into Bitcoin, because mortgage debt is not mark to market. It's against an asset which is fairly stable. Normally, the interest rates are somewhat subsidized by a Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac program or a government program. So it's the cheapest form of permanent capital that someone can get. So, I give you what you shouldn't do. You shouldn't quit your job. You shouldn't splurge on sports cars. You can't.
So that's Michael Saylor. I just want to end the show on some good news here. And he's suggesting, and this is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. He's like, borrow against your asset to buy more Bitcoin and don't waste money. I mean, at the end of the day, if you have a steady job, keep your expenses low. I'm not saying don't enjoy your life, but keep your expenses low and do dollar cost averaging. Whatever you can afford a month, just buy Bitcoin every day, every week, every month at the same price. I'm going to buy whatever, $100 a month. I'm going to just do that every month because that's what I can afford in my budget. Whatever you can fit, just set in all these exchanges, set up auto buy, dollar cost averaging at whatever price makes sense to you. And every couple of weeks, whenever it builds up a little bit, move it to your cold wallet and hang on to it, because if he's right, in 20 years, Bitcoin's going to be worth 13 million a coin. What if he's half right? What if it's only worth 6.5 million in 20 years a coin? Again, that Ferrari, that fancy this, that fancy that. So I want regular people to own Bitcoin so that billionaires don't own all of it. Because and Michael Saylor has said this, when every billionaire figures out, oh, this Bitcoin, what it is, they're going to all start buying it because billionaires want to own everything. And then you can have intergenerational wealth. Those are my thoughts. Thanks for watching. Follow the money, connect the dots, get the truth. like, share, subscribe. Go over to our new channel, Bitcoin Hollywood. We also have bitcoin-hollywood.com. And we're going to be, making some cool announcements, rolling out some cool stuff, some scripted films, movies, TV shows that are having little Bitcoin themes in them, but they're still going to just be entertaining, whether you are into the orange pill or not. Thanks for watching, everybody, and shave your knuckles for justice. Boom. All right, that's our show, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. It was really, and thank you, a couple of you going over to thank you, everybody, for watching and subscribing over to Bitcoin Hollywood. I appreciate it. It's a small, hit the like button. All those, I say all those are all great free ways to support our show. So if you go over right now, it's just youtube.com/@Bitcoin Hollywood and subscribe to it and hit the bell notification button. And and go through and watch some videos and like them and give them positive reviews. All those little things feed the algorithm. And those are ways you can support what we're doing for free. Thank you so much, everybody. Like I said, I'm going to be doing more live streams. So like, share, subscribe, and stack sats. Stay humble, stack sats, right? Shave your knuckles for justice. Boom.